For today's video, I'm going to try to survive as a colony of mountain-dwelling dwarves trapped on a feudal world surrounded by danger. When I finally shelled out the $24.99 for the biotech DLC, I immediately knew what I needed to do. After installing a few mods and theory crafting, I set to creating the ultimate life form, which I define as burly cave-dwelling miners with bad tempers, ugly faces, and a crippling love of alcohol. It's the holiday season, and I really wanted to be reminded of my family this year. In other words, I'm playing Dwarf Fortress in Rimworld. For this challenge, my colonists will be locked in the medieval ages, though a little further on than you might expect. In addition to sword and bow, these stumpy alcoholics will defend their hold with black powder firearms. If you've watched my channel for a while now, you'll know about my love of artillery and ordnance, and it wouldn't be a Rimworld playthrough if I didn't pack at least a little firepower. And since dwarves are the embodiment of manliness, there was nowhere better to land than the same dark forest where my first medieval playthrough took place. Except this time, we were hiding inside the mountains, far away from the tree monsters. My first colony landed in the most cluttered zone imaginable. 3 dwarves lost and roaming in the ancient ruins of a mountain pass under the blinding sun. As a show of appreciation, I let my Patreon backers choose the name for my 3 genetically modified gigachads. Karsta, the Tamer, Mim, the Loner, and Boy Kisser, the Vengeful. Strange human tech was scattered around the place, along with strange human corpses, but I'm sure none of that was important. Nothing bad ever happens in the Dark Forest, we can probably just ignore all that. Mim started tunneling into what would eventually become our new home. Unfortunately, it just fed into another opening filled with more of this green shit. Disgusting. Look at all these elf poles. No self-respecting dwarf would live surrounded by leaves and foliage. Real dwarves sleep on hard floors and huff coal dust, like the great Father Grungni intended. Now this is more like it. It's not though. It's really not. Holy shit, look at all that. What a sad, miserable little hovel. On the bright side, all of this stone means I'm never going to need building supplies. I could not have more stone if I asked for it. And from here, I can start digging out my hold. A hold is typically more than just one long rectangle with sleeping spots. At least the nice ones are. We don't have that. So, work began on the fortress. Soon, we'd graduate from a shitty mountain cave to a proper home, as long as we avoided getting sidetracked with needless distractions. For example, these strange rocks that dropped in the forest. I'm not sure what blasphemous human god threw his trash on my lawn, but I'm not impressed. I'm also not impressed with this human's attempt at fighting insects. Pathetic. Grow a beard, lose a couple feet, and drink some fungus ale. Maybe then you'll have what it takes to fight like a real man. Ah! I'm taking your loot, you don't deserve it. There's a lot of good shit here. Look at all that bread and silver. I don't know what these are though, they look elegant, sophisticated, more elf bullshit. A proper dwarf would never get caught wearing this. Dwarves wear iron and steel, not this knife-eared techno-wizardry. Still, it'll sell for a pretty penny, so I'll find a nice corner to throw it in. Out of character, it actually really fucking hurt to refuse my colonists this gear. Imagine having some of the best armor in the game just fall into your lap, and for the sake of the theme, you can't use it. My heart broke every time I looked at it. Maynard knew what the fuck he was doing, that sadistic bastard. Now, just like with my pawns, my patrons got to pick the names for my faction and my settlement. So, while Karsta roamed around in a stress-induced stupor, the names were decided. Clan Winterhearth, lords and rulers of Gerald Mountain Village. Maynard was so pleased with the names that he dropped several pounds of goat cheese outside my house. Valea be praised, look at all that cheesy goodness. Dwarves are eating good tonight. It wasn't all good news though. A gnome named Siwi saw my dairy and he was making a mad dash for my front door. An appropriate amount of force was used to dissuade his advances and liberate his silver. We dwarves are extremely peaceful. If you disagree, we'll kick the shit out of you while you bleed to death. Now, true to dwarf nature, my colonists aren't exactly calm creatures. In fact, any minor inconvenience will result in them getting in an absolutely bloody fist fight. And since dwarves are inhumanly strong, they can really do a number on each other. Luckily, this means they can also just manhandle the shit out of lesser beings, specifically those over the height of 5 feet. However, things here weren't really meant to last. Your average run in Dwarf Fortress typically lasts between 5 to 10 in-game years. That's about 8 hours of real time, give or take. I was an hour in and Boy Kisser had literally ripped Karsta's leg off by headbutting him in the ribs. When the winter came, my food supplies vanished. I was desperate, and I made the bold decision to piss off the local wildlife. I hoped Boy Kisser could outrun the beast. She couldn't. Instead, she had to run for her life while Mim dove in with an axe. Karsta was still missing his leg, so he had to hobble behind. And while he tended to Boy Kisser's wounds, he fell into a fevered state of madness. He predicted what was soon to come, and as a warning to the others, dug up a dead raider and threw it in my living room. Then, he ran off into a nearby cave and tried to fistfight a horde of insectoids. Mim was so distraught that she fell into a daze and started running around in circles. Boy Kisser made the bold decision of catching malaria, then made the selfish decision to die of it 3 days later. And to really rub salt in the wound, Maynard Medieval thought it would be funny to take a little walk down memory lane. Mim locked herself indoors, leaving my poor husky to be mauled by the fantasy buffalo. And there, she would slowly starve to death and live out her days alone in darkness. A sad reminder that dwarves are mortal too, and a warning that Rimworld is a perilous game filled with tragedy. On to the second try. The plan was the same, except this time we had a group of different dwarves with different names. Glorgnarth, except his name didn't quite fit, so now he's just Glorgnart. Poopin' Fartin, a brilliant doctor and researcher, and Snorri, a builder. Again, I did not get to pick these names. Within 40 seconds of arriving, the Death Stingers were charging at my colonists and trying to eat my pet rat. I'd completely forgotten to arm my settlers, but apparently that didn't matter because dwarves are terrifying. When you can crush diamonds between your thighs, you don't need weapons. You need to give me a call. They beat the insects to death with their bare hands and only sustained superficial injuries. After a quick bit of first aid, the mining of our new house continued. I made a big hole to throw my rocks into. When you make a cave base, you're going to have a lot of stone chunks to move around. To that end, it made sense to just throw the stone cutting spot in there while I was at it. To celebrate such a great start to things, Poopin' Fartin and Snorri started smacking the shit out of each other. Then completely healed less than 24 hours later. After all that joy and merriment, it was time for the real work to begin. Watching creatures I've specifically bred to be good at mining dig a tunnel is amazing, especially at 3 times speed. And to wrap up the first day of Jugust, one of my neighbors generously donated 2 loaves of bread to my hold. Just what was needed to get them through the next step, giving everyone their own bedroom. Not only are my dwarves quick to anger, but they also have extremely ugly faces. When you're angry and everyone around you has a face like a pug, every little inconvenience can make you snap. To keep my people from killing each other, I needed to remove every little discomfort or problem they could possibly have. We also needed a workshop, a must-have for any dwarven stronghold. Poopin' Fartin reminded me that my base was ugly when she cornered Glorgnar in the kitchen and tried to beat him to death. Her 2 companions then double-teamed her until she could no longer walk. I've never seen a colonist take so much damage without dying, then immediately get back up. Dwarves really are the alphas of the humanoid population, my god. By the 12th of September, temperatures had dipped below freezing. In a medieval run, this can be especially troubling since food is hard to gather in the early stages. No power means no freezers, which means storing food for the long term is borderline impossible without researching. Luckily, once winter rolls around, food can be frozen just by sitting in an unheated room. And even luckier, a group of rocks were on the map around the same time I had visitors. They seemed more than happy to help fill my freezer, which was extremely generous of them. Now I just had to wait inside until the surviving rocks calmed down and the dying ones bled out. Unfortunately, all the blood from the dwarves and animals made my haul an absolute nightmare, to the point that, for the first time since I've started playing this game, every single one of my pawns had a mental episode, at the exact same time. It was then that I realized, This playthrough's gonna be great. So what if my base is an absolute bloodbath? Who cares if 2 of my 3 dwarves have malaria while my doctor is mortally wounded? I'm not gonna worry, I've got 5 whole packs of medicine. We're gonna be just fine here. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. A huge thanks to my patrons for helping suggest this idea and for helping me name my settlements and my colonists. More content on the way, so stay tuned. Thank you all again, and I'll see you all next time.